episode 6. I can't believe it's episode 6. But it is. Had a lot going on the last 6 weeks for everybody. So we'll just have to see how we go. But yeah, we'll just wait a few seconds more. And if people are in, we'll get going.
If people are joining now. Yeah, you can go.
So welcome, it's episode 6 of the Lockdown Lowdown. I hope you're enjoying it. 6 weeks of this. I can't believe we've all been locked down for 6 whole weeks. I've spoken to a lot of people this week. Some are finding it more difficult than others. But we'll try and today deal with a lot of the boxing news. There's been a lot of it this week, and a lot of financial news. There's a lot of that this week, so quite a lot to get through. I'll try and speed through it as fast as I can. And then at the end of it, if there's any questions as per usual, fire them away, and Olivia, my delightful daughter, will fire the questions to me. So we'll start off with some news of boxing, and then we'll go on to the financial. As far as boxing is concerned, we've had 3 threats of comebacks this week. We've had Tony Bellew, David Haye and Mike Tyson. Let's deal with them individually. Tony Bellew, who's been in the Who Dares Wins SAS, I can't believe he's even thinking about it. David Haye, it verges on the ludicrous. And just deal with those two together. It concerns me that sometimes ex-boxers do it to get their names out there and get a headline, because it's not reality that Tony Bellew will ever be better than he was when he fought David Haye and when he lost to Usyk. I know he's talking about Andy Ruiz, but he's already retired once, so I think he should stay retired. And David Haye, I don't think the public will buy into it again, and he's had a great career and was a world champion at cruiserweight and heavyweight, but to announce he wants to fight again, or potentially wants to fight again, his body is healed, and I've worked with David Haye before, I just think it's just ridiculous and people should stay retired. Mike Tyson at 53 there's a famous video it's a big video on Twitter, I think I've seen it, where he shows exceptional speed for a 53-year-old, but it doesn't mean he should come back. I know he's talking about exhibitions, and maybe he will come back and do a couple of exhibitions, but at 53, I think he should be doing other things than punching people. But they are the news, 3 comebacks, but sometimes you wonder whether people are looking for headlines, and it's not, I think sad's probably not the right word, but you know, disappointing. Okay, a couple of weeks ago I praised the British Boxing Board of Control. They came out with what I considered to be an excellent statement, and then they've come out with another one this week, which for me just now muddies the waters once again. And what I mean by that is they firstly published the guidelines by which they will let shows resume behind closed doors, and I think that is very fair to do that, because I think for promoters that want to do behind closed door shows, to be told it's 5 fights, testing before, lock them down, quarantine afterwards, I think it gives them a chance to understand that. So for that point I do agree. But here's where I don't agree. They mentioned a potential date of July. Now we're in May, and we are now, 8 weeks away from the start of July, 10 weeks from the middle of July. We're still in lockdown. There is unlikely to be a lockdown release this Thursday. And if we look at, say, something like Ireland, which is the closest place to us, bearing in mind it borders with Northern Ireland, they've announced a 5-point system. And under their system, gyms are not even open till August. And sporting events behind closed doors can take place before that. But if you can't open your gyms till August, surely that's irresponsible to allow boxers to get in a ring without sparring, because technically, legally, you're not allowed to spar, and without being able to go into a gym. I do find that a bit strange. And then the 2 main promoters, have taken it in a slightly different way. I mean, Eddie Hearn's embraced it, talking about doing a show in July behind closed doors, hiring out hotels. And Frank has basically said that he feels that the Dubois-Joyce fight is too big to go behind closed doors, and he wants the O2 to remain open to the public in July. So all of a sudden, from a bit of clarity where it's let's wait and see what the government does, you've now got totally muddied waters again. You've got boxers ringing up trainers saying, oh, I want to be on a show. Trainers saying, well, how can I put you on a show when I can't train you properly and it's dangerous? And I think all the waters have been muddied. Obviously, hopefully when Boris comes out on Thursday, we'll get more clarity. But for me, that was not That was not the right statement. Obviously, hopefully, boxing can go safely on behind closed doors, as I've said before, but there's a hell of a way to go, and we're only not 8 weeks away from the start of July. I did find it strange. I think it's more reasonable. I don't, as I said before, I think behind closed doors is fine. I think the board have set out their terms in staging behind closed doors, which are fine. But for people to start talking about dates at this moment in time, I don't think it's the most responsible thing to do. I think it's clear from the stuff that's been out this week that small hall boxing is further into the distance, exactly as I've been predicting. Because even if you look at Ireland's rules when they open up sporting arenas and theatres, it's going to be very difficult for small hall to operate on those conditions. And more about that, if you haven't read it, go and have a look at the board's memo. But for me, from what was very clear, has now become very muddied, and now boxers are training for dates and pressurising their trainers, and trainers are rebelling, and this will be going on all around the country. So I think that's a little bit disappointing. Let's move on to the financial markets and the financial world. The FTSE over the last week stayed about level. You had the growth in the first 3 days before markets fell back on Thursday and Friday. Probably a bit of reality set in that sentiment was driving prices up too quickly. And then you had obviously Donald Trump have the spat with China, and then obviously the fact that there could be problems between those two that dragged the markets down. As far as I can report from my own clients, some of whom will be watching, I can report that even in the last week, my clients have achieved growth once again. 5 weeks out of 6, we've all received positive returns on our investments, so that has gone very well. And something that I do want to pick up on, I've just written my notes down here, is the fact that I've come across it a few times, is that one of my clients' children, sons, he actually does it, and he doesn't really know what he's doing, but he tries to buy his own shares on an app. And I was reading a big thing about this from America, and it was saying that clients that have done this, I think they know what they're doing. There's been some really bad tales of losing lots of money doing this, and people think that you could just get an app, decide what shares to buy without professional advice, and you're going to make money. In the short term, it's like gambling. You can make a profit, but the long term shows that on analysis that most people end up having a bad run where they lose a considerable amount of money. And it's something that, if any of you out there are doing this, I would strongly urge you to think again. You wouldn't want to become a professional boxer and go to somebody who is a specialist in cycling to tell you what to do. It's the same in anything in life. You need professionals to guide you, help you, reassure you, give you guidance in certain times and help you. So DIY investment for me is a long-term solution most of the time to financial disaster. Moving on to what else in the markets. Now, for those of you involved in investments or know anything about it, most of you will know of a chap called Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett is probably the best investor of our generation. He's 80 odd years of age now, runs an investment firm in America called Berkshire Hathaway. And for anybody who's involved in finance, you will know who Warren Buffett is. He's the guru of money around the world. He this week, this is very interesting, he this week has sold all of his stock in all airlines. Now he's took a loss on those stock, in other words he's bought it there and he's selling it there. But he says it's best to sell and cut your losses. Whereas most people, they have losses and they try and hang on to them and wait for them to bounce back. He has decided that they will not bounce back at this stage and he's better investing his money elsewhere. That's very interesting considering that the same client whose son's done his own stock has bought airline stocks in a recovery position. So Warren Buffett, the best investor in the world, best investment manager in the world, who is saying I'm getting rid of my stocks, and my client's son, who's a DIY investor, buying airline stocks because he thinks it's a recovery position. It's mental madness adopting that sort of strategy. One thing Warren Buffett has said, and his most famous saying of all time, which is something that I have spoken to my clients about in the past, is be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. Investing is about investing your money, going to the party, celebrating and leaving. What a lot of people do is they invest at a time when the party's over and then they get the hangover. So it's very important not just to invest with the crowd and invest when things are great. You should look at investing sensibly when things appear not so great, because that is when you get the greatest returns. Moving on finally to the government's £50,000 grant to businesses, which is a new thing that's coming out and it's available from tomorrow. Rishi Sunak has announced a grant for small businesses of up to £50,000. Well, it's not a grant, it's a loan. £50,000 is the maximum you can borrow, or 25% of your turnover. Now here's the bit. You do not have to pay interest back for 12 months. So if as a business you qualify for this loan, subject to the terms that are out tomorrow, there is no reason not to claim this loan. And even if you put the money on deposit for 12 months and then pay the loan back in 364 days, according to how as I understand it today, you can just make a profit out of taking that loan. So it's a £50,000 loan up to a maximum of 25% of turnover. There is no reason for a business, as I understand it today, and I'll say the finer details will be out tomorrow, but for not to take that loan, because even if you needed it for other purposes, it's a cheaper way of obtaining money for the next 12 months than you're going to get anywhere else. If you qualify, have a good, serious look at that. And again, as I say to everybody every week, even if you're not a client of mine and you get stuck and you watch this, message me and I'll try and guide you through it. So that's the overall thing of the week, and that last thing is something you should all consider. And by the way, that's whether you are, as long as you're in business, and that will be governed by your tax returns. Okay, Olivia, do we have anybody questions?
Yeah, we've got Karina. She says, what's your thoughts on the PL season being completed on neutral grounds and all next season being played behind closed doors, which has just broken?
Okay, the neutral ground thing I knew of, because they've got 8 grounds in there. It's about money, right? I mean, in reality, the season is not the season if you're now finishing it on neutral grounds. You're not getting the home and away. It's not a proper season. It's about generating money and fulfilling their financial contracts. About playing behind closed doors, again, I think if it's safe to do so and they can have the test without taking tests away from people that need it, then I think from that point of view it's going to help the nation's spirit, because it's going to be a tough time over the next 8 or 9 months until hopefully a vaccine is found. In itself, you've got to remember with football, everything is about the pound note, everything is about money. For me, the season should have been scrapped and maybe started again in September, and then, as I say, behind closed doors, because I think it's unlikely that we do that. Just the thing about the behind closed doors, in Ireland, they have announced, and Ireland is on our borders. They're again not opening gyms till August, and I think it's they're not looking to do public events until August, and then it's got to be spaced out. So there doesn't appear to be any time soon that they're going to allow football arenas to be fully packed up with fans. So I think, but I do think you've got to balance that with the fact that if it is safe for them, that people at home will have something to watch and enjoy, because that's going to be in very small quantities going forward.
Okay, and we've got, will the Saturday fight night shows be broadcasted online from now on, and will there be a possibility of seeing no pay-per-view shows this year?
Absolutely. No, you're going to get hit with pay-per-views, that's for sure. I'd imagine that if you've got to look at it, I mean, I don't know what Matchroom are doing, but I would imagine that when they go back, they're only allowed to put 5 fights on a show. They've got to get their fighters out, but they can't put them in one-sided mismatches, because that's not going to be acceptable if you can only have 5 fights on. So I would assume you will get Saturday night fight nights, probably next-gen type shows from Matchroom. But no, if you think that Dylan White's going to fight non-pay-per-view, not a hope in hell. Not the money that these people demand now at this level. You're not going to get Chisora Usyk or Povetkin against Dillian without pay-per-view money, because those fighters will not box without that sort of money.
Okay, we've got Paula. She says, what's your thoughts on how the housing market is going to be impacted after this pandemic?
I think we covered this a couple of weeks ago, and in my opinion, it's how much it falls. I think the housing market, if you're looking at the housing market, lenders like Santander, one of the biggest lenders, this month will not go above 75% loan to value, And for a new build, rightfully so, because new builds are so ridiculously overvalued, they're only going 60% loan to value. You're going to find that a lot of people they would have lent or might have lent to 3 months ago, they probably won't. They'll look at people's affordability, they'll be more unemployed. The only result of that can be that house prices, in my opinion, do fall. It's by how much. But I have a theory about this over 10 years, not just necessarily over the shorter term.
And that is all the questions we've got today.
So we've got today.
Yeah.
It's a very short version. Well, thank you for the small amount of questions. It means I can...
Oh, hold on 1 second. We've got another one.
Okay.
Jack, he says, what do you think about the boxing being behind closed doors?
I don't think you can replicate boxing, a boxing live event. And you've got two scenarios. You've either got no boxing or behind closed doors. So I think behind closed doors is something we can all watch. I don't think it will replicate it. I don't think it will be the same. But as a boxing fan, the question is, would you rather have it behind closed doors or would you rather have none at all? Because it's the only way I think you're going to get boxing for quite a considerable period of time. If I'm right, obviously the Frank interview I saw, I'm not sure how long ago he did it, they were still hoping to do Dubois Joyce behind closed doors, but that was published, I saw it online today. They were hoping to do that live. I can't see that in a million years, but we'll know a lot more obviously when Boris puts his stuff out on Thursday. But I can't see any live boxing events with large crowds for any time soon, in my opinion. So I welcome behind closed doors. It keeps the boxers employed, gives some people a chance to get out, and hopefully it's safe enough for them to do it.
We've got Steve Tyrrell, who says, we've sold 5 houses in the last 3 weeks for your info, new build.
Yeah, because is that what you do, Steve? I won't believe you've got people out there that are buying that shouldn't be buying. That's what I would say, in my opinion. I think buying new build at the moment is, if that's what you do, good luck to you. You're selling them, but I wouldn't be permitting or encouraging my children to buy a new build.
Okay, Darren McKenna says, since the markets dropped to recent lows in mid to late March, they have rebounded and recovered a high percentage of the losses. Given that the economy has basically stopped, there seems to be a wide disconnect between the markets and the economy. Do you think the markets could fall back further than the lows in March?
So let's deal with the first point. The market haven't recovered a large point of their losses, if we look at this straight. So the FTSE was trading at around the 7374 mark and fell down to 49. So we've fallen points, about 2,400 points, and we're sitting today at 5.7, and we've recovered 800 points. So it has not recovered a large proportion. That's a false. The markets have recovered somewhat from the bottom, but we're still a long way off. If you take the FTSE itself, a long way off the top. The American market has rebounded a lot better, but that's still I think it's 24,000, and the market hit 28, 29. So that's still substantially off. So the first point is we've had a bounce back up from the bottom, but it hasn't recovered a large portion of losses. It's recovered a small portion of the losses. If you're invested in funds, smart ways, funds that I do for my clients, then they haven't fallen as much and they've gained a bit more. So they're not as far behind as the actual indexes are. As far as could there be a second fall? 100%. It's very possible. Often in these situations where you have a crash and then things rebound, it can fall again. You can get a double dip. And that is very possible because what you've got at the moment is all the statistics are very bad, but a lot of those have been already built into the falls of the market. You've also got sentiment that has been driving it upwards, but it won't take a lot to drive sentiment down again. So nobody can be sure if we're at the bottom yet, but there is always uncertainty. When you go to invest to make money, and you take money out of a building site and you go to invest, you buy uncertainty for greater long-term returns. So that's why, as I was saying before, that advice is key. It's not just about investing. If you're investing now, it's about investing in the right things that helps you through this particular point. And I've done a lot of investment this week, and it's about foreseeing going forward what you believe is going to happen. Just as I was talking about new builds just now from a negative perspective, and there are other things that I think have got very positive, are positive going forward. I hope I'm wrong with the new builds because obviously there's a lot of people buying them, and I wouldn't like to see people catch a cold. But I think we've seen that going back to new builds, and this is statistically proven, that nearly everybody that's bought a Help to Buy new build in the last 2 years is now sitting in negative equity. Whereas if you bought a second-hand house 2 years ago, you're sitting in profit. So and they are statistics that can be proven. But as far as the market's concerned, if you're going in, be careful, get professional advice, and everybody's advice should be different.
Okay, and we've got Dean Field, who says, do you think white collar boxing has been damaged following the recently shown documentary?
I hope it's been damaged. It shouldn't be allowed to take place. So damage, it just shouldn't be there. It should be outlawed. I mean, you shouldn't be teaching somebody in 8 weeks to become a fighter and letting them in the ring. It's dangerous. It's unsafe. It shouldn't happen. And I hope it's been damaged. The actual, just taken from there, when you say, when we go to unlicensed boxing, that's slightly different. Unlicensed boxing is, you take, say, Queensbury Promotions, and people like the IBA with Alan Mortlock. These are much higher level stuff, and that's different. So that is somebody that will do something before they go professional. So there's a different argument there. We're talking about white collar. I'm talking about these people that don't know how to box and learn in 8 weeks. It just shouldn't be allowed to take place.
Okay, and we've got Julio again. He says, how many shows that you typically organise end up in profit? Sauerland mentioned that in the majority of his shows he acquired a loss, so I'm curious.
Just trying to think of all the promoters. I would say more shows. The profit margin, let me tell you, there's no big profits and big losses. There can be big losses if you're stupid, but I would say overall, most shows would show a profit because if you're being smart. But you do have some shows that make a loss.
Okay, we've got Paula. She says, with the leisure industry relying on monthly direct debits to make their bottom line, even when restrictions relaxed, how do you see fitness and exercise in gyms going forward?
I think fitness and exercise gym is one of the first things that goes. Same as going to watch boxing shows. These are not essential things. People will now, who have been going to gyms, will be finding other ways to get fit. And if they go back and money is tight, they're not going to rejoin the gyms. Just as they won't rejoin necessarily cinemas and things like that where they have the monthly fees. I think it could be affected, but I think money's going to be tight, so people are going to have to make choices with their money. So I think there will be an impact. I think gyms will still exist, but they will probably have to cut their cloth accordingly, the same as many other industries.
She also just added, she said, obviously many boxers also do personal training as an additional income, as well as use gyms to train. Would you also see this having a big impact on them?
Yes, I think that's probably the biggest impact. I think people may pay their £20 a month gym membership. I think that's it. But then personal training, where I've heard of things from 20 quid up to 60 or 70 pounds. If people are building their businesses back up, one of the things that may well go are personal trainers. I think personal training is something that is going to be hit. I've always thought, just talking about personal training, that I think personal training is something that only has a limited shelf life anyway. I don't believe that there'll be personal training as we see it now going for the next 15 years. I think the personal training possibly may go more towards online, where people pay a smaller fee. And I think a lot of things over the period that we've had and what we're going through this year are going to change forever the way that different businesses have to operate.
And that is it.
And that is it. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope that it's all been useful. Remember that these are my opinions. They're not things that you should act on. I have an opinion about new builds. Doesn't mean if there's any advice here for you not to buy new builds. You do whatever you feel you should and whatever your advisor tells you to do. But I wish you all the best, and I look forward to speaking to you next week, where we'll know a lot more about the government's plans, and we'll probably get some idea about when gyms are going to open. So I look forward to speaking to you next week. Take care.